Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the third of a series of basic Python programming course. I'm Sarjun and you can call me Sarj. I'm a data scientist, a data science trainer, and a mentor to the youth. Before we start today's session, please help me with my socials as I'm trying to reach out to as many people as possible. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Subscribe, message me, DM me, so we can, I can get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you. And getting on to today's session. Yeah. So you should remember how to get into your Jupyter notebook. So for myself, I open up my Anaconda prompt. I cd into my documents. You should cd into your, your relevant folder. In this case, Python programming, and then Jupyter notebook, right? So unlike myself, you may have lesser files, obviously, because I have more files, right? So for me, I'm in my course materials. You may not. You definitely do not have all this. These are all my notes, right? Yep. So we'll move down to this variables course lecture for today. Okay, so you should see this. So today we're going to be doing variables, data types, different variable data types, right? So our focus will be on data types today, basically variable data types. We will be looking a bit on arithmetic operators, casting and conversion between these data types. Okay, why am I looking at arithmetic operators? Because arithmetic operators do work on specific data types only, like string variables, and depending on your variables inside certain data structures like list or dictionary, which we'll be learning later, it makes it have an impact on whether you can do any kind of arithmetic operators or not, or operations or not, right? So that's important. Okay, so variables. So before we go into any further complication kind of stuff, it's better to understand what variables are. Okay, variables are reserved memory that store data values. So it's just a memory that stores a particular value, right? Initially we did like print statements, and then we did the codes to print it out, right? But if I were to say without the codes, right, how will the program know? So you need to let the program know that a specific variable is equal to something, equated to something, right? It stores that value inside, right? So unlike other programming languages that are like C, C++, Java, Python does not require a command to declare the variable value. So that's kind of like a kind of high level programming tool. So the equal operator, okay, is set to assign value. So it's not an equal operator in Python code. We call it the assignment operator. So you're assigning a value to it. The same variable can be used to store different values. So only the latest assignment of the variable value will be stored. So if I were to store example x to 5, and then I store x, sorry, if I store 5 to x, that's better be confirm with the convention. So it's 5 to x, right? If I store the value 5 to the variable x, it should only be storing x. Like give you an example here quickly, okay? Let me add. So if I were to say x equals to 5, right? And then I call out x. I just call out x. It says x is 5, right? But if I say x is equals to, sorry for the jump. Okay, so if I say x is equals to 5, and then I say x is equals to 6, and then now I call out x again, it only stores the latest assignment of x. It doesn't remember that x was actually 5. Actually, it does remember x was actually 5 until you assign it to 6. So it forgets that it was 6. It forgets it was 5. Now it remembers it's 6. So if you call out x now, it's going to say 6, right? And then it's like, then you're like, I thought I assigned 5 earlier before that, but it's not going to remember that, right? It's already overwritten, right? That's very important, right? So in that case, let's do some quick examples, right? Example of the variables. We're going to do a quick assignment of string variables, okay? So it has to be in quotes, and we are going to do it for this 4 examples. So firstly, create a variable called person name. So it's quite explanatory lah. Variable equal person name. I'm going to set it to Gary, right? and then I'm going to set his age. So age, the variable age is equals to 23. Sorry, numlock really plays 23. And then create a variable marital status. Remember, I can't do it as married because married is actually another variable, right? So I need to make sure that if I call it married means it's going to throw an error, right? Okay, let's try. Let me just do married, okay, without the quotes. It's going to be an error, okay? I'm just going to show it now, okay? And I want to show, yeah, this tree. So I'm going to print. Okay, this time I'm going to print person name. If you notice, I'm not going to use the quotes anymore because the system already knows that person name this time around is Gary. It's going to call person name and it's going to call what is stored inside person name is Gary, right? So it's going to call up Gary. Initially, we did it like a quotes, right? So this time around, we're not going to do that with quotes. We're going to say person name. We're going to print age. We're going to be printing marital status. Okay, but before I run this, I'm going to tell you this is going to be an error. Okay, you can see there's an error because married is not defined, right? As I said, married is not defined. Married is not a variable. Married is actually it's actually a variable, but it's not defined yet. So we are trying to use married in quotes. So this time around, when I run it, the first time when I say print person name, Gary comes out. Print age, 23 comes out, and print marital status, married comes out, right? One good thing is that whenever you pass in even this 23 without the quotes, you know, it comes out as 23 because Python understands that in the print statement, when a numeric variable is passed into pre-printed, it converts it to a string variable before displaying it, right? On the other hand, okay, so this is very important. The difference between last execution, I'll put an explicit print function. Okay, again, I'm going to show you what is this distinction about, right? Okay, so now, if I were to say the same thing, so let me copy this. I'm a bit lazy to type it again, so you can just copy and paste it here. So I create 3 variables and I'm going to do a print. I'm just going to print marital status, right? Marital status, right? And here I'm going to call out marital status. There's a big difference. Calling out and print are 2 separate things. So if you notice, both comes out, right? But this print statement is an exclusive forcing Python to print out this what is inside the variable marital status. So it's a forced print, you know, it's like something that's being showed, a forced display, right? But this last line here, number 11 here, this marital status, when I call it out, you can see there's an out here. This out actually means it's just running the last line's outcome to the display, right? So the thing is, if I were to set, say, person name, also to call it out again, it just calls out the last line. So you see marital status now is overwritten, or it's kind of like it doesn't call out marital status, it calls out person name. It skips. So it prints marital status as married. Then the line number 11, it runs the code, but it does not do anything because it's just a variable. There's no specific instructions to that variable, right? So it just understands, okay, you just call out the variable, but it doesn't do anything significantly important. It just says, okay, that's a variable. That's it. I think there is no real execution in that code line. And then it goes on to the person name, and then it executes the last person name, and then it shows you Gary, right? So this is important because you need to know print. Sometimes when you write multiple statements and nothing comes out, it's because you don't actually have or have not instituted a strict policy for it to print, right? So it will not print out unless specifically stated. So this is important, right? Okay, this is what I said. This is what I mentioned about reassignment. Okay, reassignment of the variable name value. Okay, when you reassign. Okay, so let's start off with this. Let's create a person name with Gary. Okay, now I want to print out the person name. Right? I do this. Right? Gary. Right? Now I want to reassign this person name with Roger. Okay, But before I do that, I want to add an additional to make it clearer. So the first person name is, then I put a comma. Okay, so this is the first person name. And then I can just Control C, Control V, and then I can do like the second person name is person name, right? So if I run this, you notice the first person name is Gary, and the second person name is Roger. So what am I trying to say here? So let me make it a bit more clearer, right? The first time the print option prints the person name as Gary, right? The second time, okay, so this one I Control C and I Control V, so that I don't have to type this again. So the second time the print option prints the person name as person name. This time it's Roger. Okay, see, the first time the print option prints the person name as Gary. The second time the print option prints the person name as Roger. So what I'm trying to say here is that you are reassigning the value Roger over the word Gary to the variable person name. So it's very important that once you reassign, you lose the previous information. And this is very important, especially for data, when you work with data and all that, right? When your variable is carrying a value, you need to understand that in systems and all that, when data is stored, it's vital that you need to understand that the latest data point that your variable is carrying might not necessarily be the variable point that you're looking for. So it's important for you to store, if you need to store those data in particular platforms such as SQL databases. Obviously Excel can also use to store this data. I'm not saying it doesn't, but you need to connect your Excel to your database and stuff like that to store where you're putting the APIs and stuff. So just be careful where you store your data, right? So that's important. Using multiple variable assignments in a single line. This is very, very unique and useful. I like that. Okay, so Gary. So here we're going to create the variables Gary age, Roger age, and Tom age, and we're going to assign it with the variable 26. Okay, so it's basically Gary age equals to Roger age. I'm telling you, I never use this function. This function exists, but I doubt I ever use this. It's just to let you know that this you can actually do like one-liners assignments to all. So Tom age is, so how Python works is that Tom age is assigned to 26. Roger's age is assigned from Tom's age, which is 26. Then Roger's age, Gary's age is assigned from Roger's age, which is 26. So they're all assigned 26. So now if I were to print Gary's age is, comma, Gary age, print Roger's age is, comma, Roger age, print Tom age. Sorry, sometimes you do too much of the typing. Everything becomes variables. Age. This is another problem. Proper English, right? It's important, right? For clarity. Tom's age is, comma, Tom age. So when I run this, see, Gary's age is 26, Roger's age is 26, and Tom's age is 26, right? So it's quite simple. It's quite straightforward, right? It's not difficult to understand this, right? You're just doing a simple assignment here. Okay, moving on. Example of multiple variable assignment in a single line, okay, for different values. Okay, this one I use a lot. Okay, so this one is where you are assigning only with one equal sign, but you're assigning different values. Okay, so this is where we use what we call tuples, right? But don't worry about this. It's just a quick understanding. Okay, so if I were to say Gary age, Gary salary, Gary experience, Gary experience is equals to, so here's 26, comma, 25751.3, comma, and 9. So all these are numbers, easy, right? So if I were to display all the variables using print function, all I'm going to do is just print Gary's age is, I pass in Gary age, print Gary's, open the quotes properly, yeah? If not, it will be wrong. And remember, when you use when you open with double quotes, you can use single quotes for those apostrophes and all that inside, right? So this is why I prefer double quotes when I write a sentence. So Gary's salary is, this is a lot of salary, yeah? Depending on whether it's yearly or monthly, right? Gary's salary, then you print Gary's experience is Gary's EXP. So when I run this, you see Gary's age is 26, Gary's salary is 25751.3, and Gary's experience is 9, right? So this is simple, quite simple to look at this, right? So just simple assignment. So Gary's age here is assigned by 26, Gary's salary is assigned by 25751.3, and Gary's experience is 9. So it just follows accordingly, right? So this is actually a tuple, but we'll learn more of that later, right? Okay, how do variables react to changes when variables are assigned to each other? So let me just make this clearer a bit. Okay, how do variables react to each other, to changes when variables are assigned to each other? Okay, let's see this changes. So this is very important. Changes, what does it mean? Okay, so let's create a variable called person name here. So n person name is equals to Roger. Okay, let's set a variable name friend name to person name. So this is what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to create a variable called friend name. I'm going to set it to person name, right? Then display all the variables using print function. So let me print person name, and let me print, okay, let's the variable person name is, for clarity, the variable person name is this, and then print the variable, see, even, so I'm not an expert in typing. Let me just tell you that first. You know, I don't think anyone is an expert in typing. Maybe there are people who are experts in typing, you know, they keep typing and typing and typing. But when you're a programmer, you don't need to be expert in typing. You just need to be able to type, right? Sometimes some people take a long time, but so don't worry if you're not very fast in typing. It's okay, right? I was very slow in typing. So if you notice this, when I run this, the variable person name is Roger, and the variable friend name is also Roger, because it's taking the assignment from person name, the value inside person name. It's not telling us that the variable friend name is person name, right? It takes the value inside person name and transfers it to friend name, right? So that's how it transfers information, the data inside. So let us change the variable person name to Gary. Okay, would it change the variable friend name? Let's check this out. Okay, so now remember, I'm now going to change person name to Gary instead. So earlier was Roger, right? So it started as Roger, right? Now let's change it to Gary, right? So when I run this, let us set. Let me go through the whole process. Sorry, so it's easier to understand. Let me start out with Roger first. So Roger is the first name, right? Let us do the same thing that I did earlier here. Wrong. Friend name goes to person name. Okay, now I want to reassign person name equals to Gary. Okay, so what I'm doing now, let me explain again. I want to set person name to Roger. and then assign friend name from person name. So Roger will go on to friend name. And then now I'm reassigning person name, and I want to know what will happen, right? So I'm going to print the variable person name is person name, print the variable friend name is friend name. When I run this, you realize that, my gosh, I still have my friend name is Roger, but when I change person name to Gary, it has actually changed to Gary now. So what has happened? So this is what we call assignment at that point of time. So if person name is Roger, it is assigning Roger to friend name. But once person name has been reassigned to Gary, there is no, since person name is no longer required to assign, because you already assigned person name from Roger to friend name, by changing person name later after the assignment, friend name still stays contact in, I mean, it's still the same. It doesn't move away from Roger, right? So this is where it's important to understand that at which point of time you are reassigning or assigning person name to friend. If you do it after you reassign Gary to person name, then this will both be Gary, right? So just be careful. This is important because you cannot say you did this and then because the person name now is Gary, and when you go look back in your code, because the codes are running in chronological order, you need to make sure that you reset them appropriately to run from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's why it's numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is very useful. It tells you which code runs first and which code runs subsequently, right? So the assignment here, you need to be very careful, right? Okay, runtime variable assignment. Okay, runtime variable assignment is very, very important. Okay, so this is basically something that you see in a lot of applications, right? So how do you do it is you type in person name and you use this function called input, and then you say, please enter your name, right? Okay, then when I run this, after I run this, I want to print person name. Okay, so this is a unique function, or actually not unique function. It's in every program, but it's a unique function in that sense. It's input for Python. So when I run this, see what happens. Okay, you can see there is a pop-up, and you see that the code is still running. There's a star. It's waiting for an input from you. As a user, is waiting. Okay, please enter your name. So you want to type, my name is Sarj. Okay, then when I enter, it prints out Sarj, right? This is a way for us to understand that you are giving it giving a variable into the system, and it gives. So you can actually make it a bit more customized. You can call it welcome. Okay, so if I do this and I run this again, I call out Sarj, you can see that it comes out welcome Sarj. Okay, so you can also see that the data type when you're using this input function, the data is stored in what we call a string. So what you can do is you can use a type function, right? And then you print type person name, right? When you do that, you actually get the class of string. So let me do it again. You print, right? type type, and then you pass in the variable name as a function. Okay, so you close it. Print type, not Sarj, sorry, person name. Don't put in your name and tell me, why it's not working. So it's your person name, because person name is a variable, and it gives me class of string. Okay, with that, we have come to the first quick practice. Okay, I will stop here. I mean, not say stop, you can pause here, right? And then we will continue. Take some time to do this. Okay, it's very useful. It helps a lot in terms of understanding this segment. They are quite easy to do these quick practices, so please spend some time to do it, and then I'll continue the video, but pause pause the video, try it out, and then at least you will have some example practices. Okay, assigning a runtime variable to Gary, right? How do we do that, right? So we want to, and the variable name is boy name, right? So boy name is equals to input, please enter your name, right? That's boy name, right? Again, I want to use boy. Age is equals to input. Please enter your age. You can call it boy age, whichever you feel is right. Okay, let's use boy occupation. You must be wondering, why am I not using any name? Well, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Just in case you are storing different boys data in one data set, like student data, right? You want to make sure that you have it's a variable that keeps changing, right? So you can't really say it's one person's name. Doesn't make sense, right? You can call it student name, student age, student occupation. It's up to you. Please enter your occupation. So this is like an application kind of a concept I'm trying to teach here, whereby you are going to be typing different variable collections in the system. So this is like an input. So you keep running this, it keeps running, and it keeps storing the data. Please enter your cash amount. Okay, this is irrelevant. I'm not sure why I need to know how much money the boy has, but right. But I'm just doing it for practice, Print boy name, print boy age, just to show that it works. Print boy occupation, and print boy money. Okay, when you run this, you will see that it's asking you to type a name, so I'm going to assign it Gary, and without the quotes. Okay, remember when you type in values inside the runtime variable, you do it without the quotes. Okay, Gary, the age is 8, occupation is student, cash amount is 35. You can see it prints out everything. Like, let me scribble this up. So it prints out everything as required. Okay, let's assign age to Mary, Maggie, and Shauna. So this is a single line operation. This should be simple to do. Mary equals to Maggie equals to Shauna equals to 24. So here I'm only going to print out Mary because that's the most crucial one. I'm assigning backwards, right? And you can see that it actually printed out 24. So it works. There are different data types that can be used to store in a programming language, such as strings that store text and sentences, float and integer that store numeric values, float which are decimals and integer which are whole numbers, and booleans which store true or false values. There are different types of data structures that can be used to store the different types of data. Note that these data structures and data types are interchangeably called variables, things like list, tuples, dictionaries, and sets. For this part, we will be covering strings, floats, integers, and booleans only. We'll be covering the other data structures in subsequent lectures. So strings, as I mentioned, are variables that hold 0 or more characters, such as letters, numbers, spaces, commas, and more. And they are usually initiated with strings, with the quotes. The use of string variables are used to record both textual information such as name, sentences, and also arbitrary collection of bytes such as the content of an image file object. The string variables are referred to as sequences. There are also other variables such as lists, tuples, and so on that are also known as sequences. Numeric variables are one that take on any value within a finite or finite interval values. They are things like floats, which has decimal points, as well as integers, which are non-decimal numbers. Boolean variables are variables that can only possibly take two values, true or false. And usually they are referred to as numbers as well between 1 and 0. So 0 being false and 1 being true. But do note that any number that is higher than 1, positive, is usually returned back as a true value. So when you convert numbers to Boolean, you better be sure that you are looking at the right numbers. Usually we use 0 and 1. Now, when quotes are added to a number, Python recognizes them as a string. This has already been explained earlier, right? So usually string variables are used to store text and non-numerical variables. Okay, so let's initialize a variable, my name, with sarj, right? And when I close it with quotes. And then now I will print this variable. My name is, and then my name. So it comes out as my name is Sarj, right? Now let's do the same print statement, but this time let's use your name is, and we do your name instead, right? So easy, right? But that's where the error starts. You realize that the system does not detect the variable your name as it's not defined, right? So we need to define your name first. So let's do it. Your name equals to, fill in your name. So let's call this John, right? Then let's print your name is your name, right? So as your name changes here, this variable, this will print accordingly. Say now it's Jill. Your name is Jill, right? It can be anything. It can be Jack, right? Your name is Jack. So it depends on what you want to store your name as, right? If you want to change your name every day, it can also be your wish, right? So you can keep changing it, right? Now we want to know what is the variable type that is being stored in the variable your name. So let's do this again. Your name, let's set it to Jack, and we want to find the variable type. This time around we use the word type function, type type function. We pass in your name, and usually we pass this whole value in a print statement, right? So here we can see it's out, but this is not the proper way to do it. It's always important to print this whole thing out. Print type your name, and it tells you this is the class of a string. So this is of a string class. So we know that inside this variable your name is actually a string, right? So that's very important to note, right? Let's move on to number variable values. So number variable values are basically, let me show you the difference, right? Let's use the variable num units purchased is equals to 5, right? Now let's create a variable called sales price prints, sales prints unit. Sales price unit is equals to 4.5, right? Now we display both variables, print both variables, okay? Okay, so this one we need to do the variable num units purchased is, then we call out num, okay, let me close this, num units purchased, right? Simple. And we do the same thing for sales unit price as well. The variable sales price unit is, then we call it sales price unit, right? Simple, right? But we also want to print the type of this as well. So let's print the type. Okay, before we do the print type, let me do this. I always like to segregate between print statements, right? I like to do this. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and then I do this print. I want to print the data type of variable. So you see, I'm actually typing what I actually ran before and remove it, right? So it's easier for you to reference it, right? Variable num units purchased is, okay. So later you'll see a class of float, you know, so here will be type of num units purchased, right? As simple as that. Similarly, I do the same thing. The data type of variable sales price unit is, so here again, I'm going to type sales price unit. Okay, so when I run this, realize that actually it gives me this output. So what's the output? It says the variable num units purchased is 5. The variable sales price unit is 4.5. The data type of variable num units purchased is class of integer, because 5 is an integer. The Python program already understands that 5 is a whole number and it assigns the integer variable to it. But then the sales price unit is a 4.5, right? Maybe it's $4.50, right? Then you realize that actually the data type of variable sales price unit is class float. So here is Python automatically detects, because there's a decimal point here, it automatically chooses the best data type to assign sales price unit to be, and it says, okay, let's do it as float, right? So so this is a very good example, right? Now let's do another example, right? Let's do x equals to 8, and then you want to find out what is the data type of x, type of x, right? Simple, it's integer, right? Now we want to create variables x and y with 8 and 5 values, right? So let's try. X equals to 8 and y equals to 5. Okay, 5. You can choose not to have the space. It's quite neater to have the space. If not, it's okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the type of x and the type of y, right? Okay, this is the same thing, right? As I said earlier, you need to use the word print in front, right? If not, it will only print the last value, right? So let's try this again, okay? So let's do x equals to 8, y equals to 5, and print. So I'm going to print the variable x is of data type of x. Simple, right? So I just need to copy this. I don't want to Control C, Control V, and I change this to y, and I change this type to y as well. So when I run this, you know that the variable x is of data type integer, the variable y is of data type integer as well. So it's easy to understand this, right? Now, let's do the same thing, but slightly different. Okay, I'm going to copy the whole thing here. Control C. Okay, so I'm going to create two variables. X is 8.0 and y is 5, right? So now, you will see that when I do this and run this program, you can see that x is now saying it's of class float, while y is of class integer, right? This is where you need to understand that because I put in the 0, right, x variable is a float instead of an integer variable because of the decimal place. The decimal place automatically associates it with an integer, right? Sorry, not integer, float, right? Away from an integer. Without the decimal place, it saves it as a integer, right? With a decimal place, it saves it as a float, right? Just be careful when you use this. Usually, you must be careful when you how Python saves this, right? Because Python uses the next best alternative option to use it. So if you don't give any decimal points, it will save it as integer. If you give any decimal points, it save it as a float. Simple, right? Now, what happens if we do the same thing but add quotes? So again, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here, right? I'm going to remove the point. I'm going to add quotes to 8, right? And I run this. You can see that this time around, the use of type function identify the data type and data type x and y. You can see that x is a string, right? And y is a integer. But now, because it's a number, x doesn't seem to be registered as a number. Even though we know it's a number, we can see, right? 8 is a number, right? But it has quotes. So the system, we are forcing the system to take this as a string. It doesn't take it as a integer, right? So now, let's do a quick comparison, okay? Let's create the same thing, copy this, paste this here, change this to 1, x to 1, and y to 1 without the quotes. You will see that the variable x is of string data type and variable y is of integer data type. Okay, so here you realize that actually, even though they are the same, they are not the same, right? We can see that they're both ones, but we can see that there is quotes in x and there is no quotes in y. So Python sees them as two separate things, even though the content inside is of the same shape. Yeah, one same value in maybe some sense, but they're taught as different stuff. It's like you are just looking at something that is the same but as two different structures, right? So this is something where you need to understand why Python does it, because we are forcing it to store as a string and forcing it to store as an integer. Okay, Boolean operators. So Boolean operators are useful when your program needs to evaluate statements, right? Let's create two variables and print them out. So let's create a true value equals to true, not TRU, yeah, TRUE. You see, it changes to green. The color changes. It depends on what are you using this white version or the dark version. The colors will change differently. False value equals to false, right? And then print them out. Print true, the variable true value is true value. Then we do another print. Print the variable false value is false value, right? Remember where I'm using the quotes and where I'm not using the quotes. They are two separate variable inputs, right? Elements, right? So the first this whole thing is the first print input element. This is the second print input. So it will concatenate, bring these two together, and then it will print it out. But you'll not print this out. You'll print the value inside here. So in this case, you can see the variable true value is true, and the variable false value is false, which is this, which is inside here. False value is actually false, where it goes back to this false value, and you see that it's equated to false. So that's how it goes back to find what value was equated to, right? Okay, this is important because what happens when you have multiple, when you have true and true, false and false, and stuff like that, right? So this is where we can use what we call the AND and OR operators. We will use the AND and OR frequently later. These are operators, right? But just to show you what they will give, right? So let's set this true value equals to true and false value equals to false. And now let me do a space indent here, enter. Okay, so now I'm going to do print true, C must open brackets, true value. Let me make it nicer a bit. The true value and false value will give. So you just do true value. I'm using a function here, it's called AND, true value and false value. So if you use true value and false value, it will evaluate between true value and false. So AND is actually another operator that's in Python. We will use more of them later on, right? This is where we are using for equation, looking at true value. So if it's true and false, false will win, right? True and false, false will win. So this is something important. True and false, false will win, right? When we use true or false, let me change this. I copy this, I paste this. So true or false, here again, there's another operator called OR. True or false, true will win. So if it's true or false, as long as there's one true, true will win. So this is important, a true or false and true. In AND, in order for true to win, it must be true and true. If it's true and false, false will win. But if it's true or false, true will win. Because at least there's one true, right? And then you can do a, let me copy this again. I don't want to type it again, right? True value and true value. That's quite simple. True value and true value. True value and true value should give you true, right? And finally, true, false value and false value. So false value or false, sorry, false value and false value. And false value should give you false, right? So let's try this one. So true and false, true and false, true or false, true or false, true and true, true and true, false and false, false and false. So let's run this. You'll see the true value and false value will give you false. True value or false value will give you true. True value and true value will give you true. And false value and false value will give you false. This is important for you to understand. Okay? You can use Boolean operators to check equivalence between variables. Use of double equal is used to check equivalence between variables. So what we can do is we can check whether 1 is equals to 1. That's quite weird, right? 1 is equals to 1. Obviously, 1 is equals to 1, right? So when we do that, the double equal is where we use for equivalence. So that's true. So 1 equals to 1 is true, right? Same, but usually you will not do right this. You will not write like, who will write 1 equals to 1, right? Very, very weird to do that, right? Thinking, why am I writing a 1 equals to 1, right? But there are cases, right, when if x, what did I do here? Okay, let me bring this, let me scroll down a bit. Okay, if I say x equals to 1, and then I do y equals to 1, and then I do a print, I do a x double equals to y, and I run this, you'll see that that's actually true. So this actually makes sense. You're comparing between two variables, whether they are equals to each other or not, right? Now, let's do the same thing. Let's do x equals to 1 and y equals to 1. But this time, instead of equals, let's try less than or equals to, right? X less than or equals to y. And here, because it's x1 is less than and equals to y, it will give you a true, right? This is something that you should know, right? 1 is less than equals to 1, as in it's just that equals to is still part of less than equals to, right? So that's just another way of looking at it, right? Earlier we did this, right? X is equals to 1 and y is equals to 1. Remember this example, right? Let's see whether they are equals to each other or not. Print x equals to y. They're not the same. Python doesn't see 1 in the string format versus 1 in a numeric format as the same. And I've just proven it to you. It's false. Python doesn't see them as the same, right? You can also do this. You can also create a variable, right? Where x is equals to 1 and y is equals to 1, and then try the not equal equivalence. Not equal means this not equals, which is the exclamation mark, and equal means not equal. To check non-equivalence between two variables, it will return true if they are not equal. So it's like not equals to y. This will return a true. Means yes, they are not equal to each other. X is not equals to y, and that's true, right? Okay, so I hope you are able to follow me. I'm going actually very slowly, right? So the use of Boolean function can be used on a variable or a statement to check its value or equivalence. So let's try this, okay? Let's create a variable called true value equals to true and false value equals to false. Now let's check with the Boolean function, okay? So print, let's just try with Boolean first. Bool true value. Let's try. So if I check the Boolean of true value, it should give me true. But this, I'm not printing it out, remember? If I do the false value, it should give me false. That's quite simple, right? So I just put a print in front, right? I do a print in front. Oopsie, typing the wrong word. Okay. Okay, So true value, true, false value, false. Now let's do the same thing, but this time let's print the false value. Let's check the response of the false value. False value. Right? It's false, right? Quite simple, right? You can also use the Boolean value to check the Boolean of 1 equals to 1. So let's try and print bool again. No one is going to do this. I'm just teaching you that this is something that you can do, right? Obviously, the more common way of doing it is to set x equals to 1, y equals to 1, and then obviously you can do a print x equals to y, right? Or you can do a print Boolean x equals to y, right? Both should give you true. Both should work. Okay, back again to a quick practice example. Assign 5,000 to the variable num units available. Assign 1,000,000.5 to variable price per unit. Then display the data types of both variables. It's quite simple. You should be able to do it. I'm going very slowly and use Boolean operators to help check if the type of both variables, display the data types of both variables, and use Boolean operators to help with this validation. So you should be able to do this, right? Take 5 minutes and pause the video, try it out. Okay, if you have any issues, yeah, sure. I'm going to continue now, so that it'll make some sense on how this works, right? Yeah, but try it out first. If no, you don't try it out, you don't really know. If I go through it and you're just going through it, it doesn't really add value to you, right? Try to do it first. Then when I go through, then it'll make more sense, right? Okay, let's go through. Okay, assign 5,000 to a variable num units available. So num units available is a variable name. I'm going to assign 5,000. Now assign price per unit to 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.50. And I'm going to print the data types. Print the data types. Type of num units available. And print type. Okay, sometimes you type PRICE, right? If you type tab, it will autocomplete, right? Sometimes it knows if there's price per unit, it will know the variable next to it will start to autocomplete the unit. So you can type tab and you should complete it. Okay, so if I run this, it will print class integer and class float. You can use the Boolean operators to validate it, right? As I said, print Boolean type num units available equals to type price per unit, and you'll give me false. They're not the same. So one is an integer and one is a float. Right, they're not the same data type. Okay, moving on. Mathematic and arithmetic operators, which is the next part of this. So these are all very simple. They're very different types of operators in Python programming languages. So let's do a quick 5 plus 7. So we're just going to type 5 plus 7 out and make it very easy, right? So it's just 5 plus 7. So Python will just give you a 7. It just works like a calculator, right? But you notice this is not a print statement. This is just 5 plus 7, right? So this doesn't really add much value. You can actually do a print. Let's try this. It gives you a 12. So it's quite simple, right? Evaluate 5 plus 7. Let's do the same, but assign 5 to x to 5 and y to 7, then assigning the sum z before printing it out. So this is quite simple. X equals to 5, y equals to 7, z equals to x plus y, print z. Simple, 12. You get the same thing. But this is coding, right? Proper coding. You just type 5 plus 7. If you're going to use the variables again or do more programming, it doesn't really help, right? You can do subtraction. Okay, subtraction, same thing. X is equals to 5, y is equals to 7, z is equals to x minus y, print z. Should give you a minus 2. That makes sense. You can also do multiplication. Multiplication is very simple. Then it's actually the shift of 8, which is the asterisk, asterisk star sign, x equals to 5, y equals to 7, z equals to x times y, print z, you get 35. Simple. You can also do division. Okay, x equals to 5, y equals to 7, and z equals to x divided by y. And display variable z output, also display the data type with the type function, right? So you know that x and y are integers, right? But what happens when you use division and then you see the variable? So because there's division, there's decimal points, Python automatically saves z in the form or z, depending on where you're from, right? Z as float, right? So that's very important for you to note as well, right? So we're going to do a data type print z. We're going to be doing a print type of z as well, right? So you can see that actually the class is float and the number is 0.71428. Okay, I'm not going to explain the whole thing. Okay, the use of brackets, I think this is very important. You all should know the Bodmer's rule. Now there are different rules, right? Padmas, something like that. Yeah, but never mind. Now they have changed. My daughter came back to me saying there's a new rule in school. So we call it Bodmer's, the old school of it, right? Bodmer's brackets of division, multiplication, and addition and subtraction, right? So x equals to 3, y equals to 5, a equals to 2, b equals to 6, and z equals to x plus y minus a times b. And I run this, and I also want to see the data type. Print them out. Print z and print type for z as well. So it's -4 and class integer. Simple, right? You can also use brackets, right? So they're essential. So when brackets, they change the whole value, right? Same thing, right? So this time you can see that a slight brackets change over. So let's copy the whole thing here. Okay, and paste it here. Control V. You can do that. You can just copy and paste it. Notice if I were to change this to be brackets here, and then I times it instead, you can see the number is now 36, and it's an integer variable, right? So do be careful whenever you are working with, brackets and all that. They change the whole values, especially for maths, right? I think you should know that. Okay, the use of double slash returns the absolute whole number output without decimals. So when you use division, if you want a absolute whole number, you don't want what we call decimal points, you use double slash. So let's start x is equals to, okay, I don't know why, I just went straight up. Sorry, I just scrolled too fast down. Okay, so sorry, let's try this again. I think edit, undo, delete cell. Sorry, I think I go and deleted my cells. I press Ctrl Z, I think. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, please be careful when you press Ctrl Z. You look at cell. Delete cell, edit. Yeah, when you do delete cells, DD. Yeah, just be careful. Don't do that. Don't do that. Right. Sometimes when you type on the keyboard, you can accidentally delete your way of cells. Right. All your hard work. So x equals to 9. Y equals to 2. Now z is equals to x / y. Print z or z. Okay, the use of not double slash, use of percentage module returns the remainder of the statement. So let's remainder. So remainder, when there's remainder, it returns the remainder. So 9 divided by 2 is going to return the remainder of 1. Right, so x is equals to 9, y is equals to z, 2, sorry. And then z is equals to x percentage. Y, percentage gives you the modulus, it gives you back the modulus sign. So print z should give you 1. Simple. Okay, with that said, now we are going to go on to a quick practice here. Okay, we're going to take 5 minutes, assign 5 to variable 5, assign 5.0 to variable 5 float. Okay, so we're going to do this, assign the remainder of variable 5 divided by 5 float to the variable my remainder, assign the remainder of variable 5 divided by 5 to variable my remainder integer, and then assign the remainder of the variable 5 float divided by 5 float to the variable my remainder float. Use Boolean operator to check if the value of the three variables are equals to each other, and use Boolean variables operators to check if the values of the data types of the three variables are equal to each other. So you must check whether the three values are three values are whether they are equal to each other, and you have to look at the three different data types and see whether they're equal to each other. So there's two set of things to do. So try it out. I'll continue later. Okay, let me go through this now. So we're going to be starting off with setting the variable 5 to 5, setting the variable 5 float is equals to 5.0, and we're going to be assigning the remainder of the variable 5 divided by 5 float to the variable my remainder. So the variable my remainder is equals to 5 percentage 5 float my remainder integer equals to 5 percentage 5, and my remainder float is equals to 5 float percentage 5 float, right? So now we're going to be printing the value of my remainder is my remainder. Okay, be careful, no spaces. It must be the same value, right? Okay, I'm going to copy this and paste it. I'm very lazy to type it. So my remainder int is equals to my remainder int, and my remainder float is equals to my remainder float. Simple, right? And then we're going to be doing check their equivalence, right? No, check their data type, right? So I'm going to print the remainder data type for my remainder is type my remainder, right? And I'm going to copy this again and do it the same for the integer version and the float version. So int, I type in here int as well. Oops, sorry. And then I do the same thing again. I type in float, and I type in float here again. Okay, this is not the end yet. This is not the end. We still haven't done the equivalence yet, which is this portion. Use the Boolean operator to check if the values of the three variables are equal to each other. So we're going to be doing this Boolean check. So print the three variable values are equal to each other, right? And we're going to be doing a dash here just to show, and then we're going to be doing bool my remainder equals to my wrong. It's not my remainder, it's my remainder, right? My remainder, capital R, equals to my remainder integer double equals to my remainder float. That's it, right? And we also want to do the same for the data type. So I'll just copy this instead of typing this again, and I'll paste this. So the data types of the three variables are equal to each other. So let's do that. Let's do a type in front of all of each of this. So type of my remainder equals to, see, I put types. So it's wrong. It should be in green, so it's type, right? The type should be in green because type is a function. It should come out as green. So here also it should come out as green as well. And here also it should be a type. And see if I'm correct. If I have done it correctly, Boolean, and then one more bracket, 3 brackets. Right, 1, 2, 3, 3 brackets, and that bracket will close the print statement because it's green. This is referring to this bracket now. Okay, so let's run this. Oh, did an error. Let's see, where's my error? Where's my error? Somewhere I did an error. It's in the last one. Boolean, type my remainder equals to this, equals to this. My remainder equals to this. Let's see. Because I'm trying to equate them, right? It says expression cannot contain assignment. Perhaps you meant this. Yes, I meant that, but I never typed that, right? So you must type. Sometimes you type so fast and you forget, Then let's run this. Oh, there's another error. Boolean takes no argument. Takes no keyword arguments. Let's see. Boolean. Oh. Let's see. What am I doing here wrong? Am I passing in a variable keyword? Oh, again, equal sign, right? So same problem. The equal sign, I missed out one equal sign and the whole thing is wrong, right? So please do watch that out as well. So here, the value of my remainder is 0.0, right? The value of my remainder int is also 0. The value of my remainder float is 0. So my remainder is a float, my remainder integer is an integer, my remainder float is against a float, right? Then you look at the 3 variables, they equal each other. Yes, they're equal to each other. In terms of numbers, they're equal to each other. But data types, they're not equal to each other. It's a false. So one is an integer and the other 2 are floats, right? So that's something important that you need to be very sure about what data types they are holding, right? Okay, moving on to conversion and casting. Okay, so Python supports conversion of one data to another. Okay, so there's implicit conversion done by the Python interpreter with intervention from the programmer. There's also explicit, so the conversion that is user defined, we force that kind of conversion to occur. So let's try this again. Okay, let's try an example. Let's do a sales price unit. We assign it with 4.5. And then num units purchased, we set it to equals to 5. Okay, important. Okay, let me move this mouse away. Okay, let's initialize a total price variable equals to 0, right? So let's print them out. Let's print all of them and then we look at their variable types as well. Simple exercise. So print sales price unit. Okay, what is the sales price? So sales price unit, and then we print the type of the sales price unit. I'm using tab here to make it faster. So print. Okay, print. Move on to the next one. Number of units purchased. Print num. See, I got 2 number of units purchased. This is what's saved inside memory. I can choose. Print the type of number of unit purchased. And then print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I just do this so that I can segregate them nicely. And then I want to print total price. Print total price. Print type of total price. Simple. So when I run this, you can see that sales price unit is 4.5. It's a class of float. Numbers of unit purchase is 5. Class of integer. Total price is 0. Class of integer. Automatic. Okay. Now, let's do a multiplication. Okay. Assign this. So let me copy this. Okay. I'm going to assign total price instead of 0. I'm going to assign it to total price is equals to sales price unit times num units purchased, right? So now we have done it. So we times it, we find the total price, then we display the variable total price using print function, then display the data type of variable total price. Okay, earlier, total price was an integer when I assigned it from 0, correct? Now, when I do the multiplication, let's see what's the data type. So let's print total price, print total price, and print the data type for total price. Close bracket, close bracket. When I run it, you can see that my total price is 22.5, and the class is a float this time around. So because when I use an integer times a float, it gives me a float. The float wins because it has to be up to the decimal point, right? This is internally done by the system, right? The system decides what is best. Python decides. Python intervenes and does it itself. Python doesn't need the programmer doesn't need to do anything, right? What about explicit conversion? So let's try what about explicit conversion? So let's do a product price. Let's set product price equals to 500. Let's say product text is equals to, this time around I'm using these quotes, right? And I want to say my total product price is equals to product price plus product text. And then I want to display the total price, which is print total product price, and I want to print total product price as well as print the type of total product price. And when I do that, I get an error because I can't add a string and a non-string variable. It doesn't make sense. Python will be thinking, hey, you're trying to add a string and a non-integer variable. It's telling me it's an integer and a string variable. I'm like, it's an unsupported operation, right? So we need to convert it. We need to convert this data. Let's try this again. Let me copy this from here, right? And paste this here, right? I'm going to set same thing, product price, product text, the same thing from earlier, but we need to use what we call the int function, the integer function, the one that converts a value to integer, right? You can, so let's try this again. Total product price is equals to product price plus integer product text. Okay, so I will then print total product price, right? Oops. Print total product price and print simple. Now when I run this, it still gives me an error. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't be running this, right? This should be run. This shouldn't be running, right? Sorry, I shouldn't be copying both. So I copy the product price, copy the product text, and then I drew this. I type total product price equals to product price plus integer product text. So the earlier one, I copied this as well without the conversion from here. Remember earlier? Here, I copied this as well. And this is wrong. This is where the error is line 7, right? Line 7, the error is here. It's saying this is an integer and this is a string. It doesn't work, right? Python is saying it doesn't work, right? So now I'm reassigning it. And this time I have to convert the string into an integer. So when I run it, it works. Total product price, 650. That's how it works, right? The thing is, if I do not convert it, it gives me an error, like what happened earlier, right? So even if I do another line here and that's an error, it sees line number 6 first as an error and then it jumps. It says, no, it's just an error, right? So you need to convert it first. So now there's no error, right? Let's try this. Let's cast a float variable data type to an integer variable data type, and we can do it. So let's assign a variable value, actual equals to 25879 divided by 658, right? Let's display print actual then use the int function. Okay, so when I'm going to use the int function, we'll return a rounded down value. So assign a variable rounded value equals to int 25879 divided by 658. So this is another rounding function, another casting approach, right? And you're going to print this. So let's see what the rounded value. So we're going to print, let me print this clearly. So actual value, let's call it actual value, is actual, and rounded value in quotes, rounded value as rounded value, right? So when I run this, you can see the actual value is 39.32978, blah, blah, blah. But when I use the integer function instead, with the values inside, it actually casts it as an integer. So it brings the value down, right? Rounded down value in this case, right? Let's try another example. Let's do the same. Actual equals to 25879. These are really random numbers. Just randomly taking out numbers, right? So let's print the actual variable. Right? This time around, you will notice that the actual is actually a higher value, right? We'll try it first. Later we'll see how it works. Okay, so let's do the same thing. Let's call rounded value is equals to int 25879 divided by 650. So instead of 658, it's 650 now, and I'm going to print this. Let's see what the value is. 25879. No, print not this. Print rounded value. Okay, so now when we run this, you can see that even though the value is more than 0.5, it's still not rounding down, right? So this is the thing about integer. Integer always rounds down, and if you need a value to be always rounded down, like number of people, you cannot have 39.8 people, right? You'd rather use an integer, so integer will bring it down, right? So that's something you need to keep track of, right? Same. So now moving on to the next one. Let's try round function, right? So let's try actual equals to round, round 25879 divided by 658. Okay, so this is round. Round is different from integer, okay? So let's print actual is going to be this value actual, right? Now let's type rounded value. Rounded value, sorry, this one is without the round. Rounded value is equals to round round 25879. I jumped the gun a bit earlier. Shouldn't have done that. So I'm doing this now. Okay, so rounded value. So now if you see it, it makes absolute sense. Oops, should make print. Bad habit. Shouldn't do that. Right, print. 39. Again, the same example. I'm going to do 650 instead. I'm going to get something that's higher than 0.5 and use the round value. So this time you should know what happens, right? So I'm going to set actual equals to 25879 divided by 650. And then I'm going to print actual. And I'm going to use the rounded value again. Rounded value equals to round of 25879 divided by 650. Okay. And then notice this time around when I print the different rounded value from earlier using round instead of integer, you will see that this value is now going to be 40, right? So this is going to be rounding up because it's more than 0.5, right? So something to be careful about then. Okay, now the use of integer function in the number value of a string data type will return the integer value. So let's assign a variable x equals to 6 with strings. So let me just space it. Then display the variable x output using the print function, and then the data type as well. So, but before I do that, I want to do integer here. Int delete and surrounded by integer. So now integer, I pass in a string variable into an integer function. It converts the string into an integer and returns the integer into the x variable. Let's check this out. Let's print x and print the type of x. And you get 6 and class integer. Wow, that's perfect. Okay. The division of two integers will result in a float data type. That's something you need to be very, very careful, right? So let's see that, right? But the remainder data type might not give you a float value. So just check this out. Let's set x equals to 4 divided by 2, and then remainder equals to 4 percentage 2, right? So remainder should be 0 because 4 divided by 2, the remainder is 0. 4 divided by 2 will give you 2. So x is 2, remainder is 0. Then display the variable out and the type function for display the variable x and the type of x. I think this should be quite simple. We have done this a million times already by now. I've done this a million times now, you know. Maybe that's an overstatement, but yes, I've done this so many times, right? So now I'm going to print remainder, do the same thing. Print the type of remainder, right? Okay, so let me just print a separation bar here so that we can keep track. Oops. Codes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, perfect. When we print this, you can see that 2, the 2.0, when x is actually 2 and the class is float, but the 0, the class is integer. So that's something that you need to be very careful about. Okay, the remainder of even numbers divided by 2 will always be 0. I think that's quite simple, right? Anything that's divided by 2, the remainder is always 0 if it's an even number, right? So let's test it out. Let's take remainder. Remainder is equals to 6 percentage 2, and then display. Okay, let's do this. Print when 6 2, the remainder is remainder. So you see when 6 percentage 2, actually not 6 percentage 2, 6 divided by 2, right? That makes more sense. 6 divided by 2, the remainder is 0, right? I mean, the output is based on 6 percentage 2, but yeah, I think you get what I mean. The concatenation of string and integer is not allowed. So you only can concatenate a string and a string. You can't concatenate a string and integer. So let's try this, okay? Let's do the same thing. Remainder equals to 6 percentage 2, right? And then we display this, right? Just give me a moment. Right? We want to do, instead of printing them as two separate elements, I want to do a concatenation, right? Inside here. So let me copy this. You can concatenate a print statement with two strings, but when you concatenate something like this, it doesn't work. It gives you an error, right? Because you can only concatenate string, not integer to string, so you can't do this, right? It doesn't work. There is a type error that will raise, and it's raised up here, right? So how do you do that? So the same thing, right? The way is remainder equals to 6 percentage 2, and then here we're going to print the same thing that I'm going to take from here, Control C. I'm very lazy to type. But instead of just remainder, I'm going to put a string function in between. So again, string function is a function that allows input to be taken in and convert that input to a string variable. Simple as that. When 6 divided by 2, the remainder is 0. Okay. So one thing when you concatenate it, you need to have a space here, because when you concatenate, it's just concatenating it. It doesn't give a space. Remember? So you want to be clearer. This is better. Okay. The use of Boolean to check the equivalence is the remainder of 6 divided by 6 percentage 2 is indeed 0. Okay, so it's quite simple, right? You just have to print Boolean 6 percentage 2, right? And you can do something like this. I'm just trying to be very cautious here. So equals to 0. I close this and I run this. It's true. So 6 percentage 2 equals 0. The boolean of it is true, right? The use of boolean value is backed up by values, as I said. Any value other than 0 is true and false otherwise. So other than 0 is true. Any value other than 0 is true and false otherwise itself. So let's try this, okay? Let's try is value true. So is value true, I set it to 1. As I say, any 1 or more is true. So is value false, I set it to 0. So you can check the boolean of, so print BOOL is value true. It's true. Okay, similarly, I can also do the same thing and check the boolean value of false. Right, so print BOOL is value false. Oops. I think I made a typo error here. Yikes. Capital V. See, Python is case sensitive, so be careful. It's capital V. Is value, okay. Yep, so you see, is value false. Simple, right? The use of Boolean value is backed up by values, as I said. So let's try. Check the value of 2, right? Let's do this as, let's try this. Let's do print BOOL 2. Let's see what response it gives you. It gives you true as well, right? It's quite straightforward. As I told you, true. So any value that is more than 1 is also true. Okay, let's try this. Convert a float variable to a string variable. Okay, assign a variable sales price unit equals 4.5. So sales price unit is equals to 4.5. Then display the variable sales price unit using the print function. Display the data type of variable sales price unit with the type function. Okay, so here, let's try. Print sales price unit, very simple. And then we print the type of it. Simple, right? That's all we need to do here, right? Now, there's a need to reassign the variable to a new value. So assign a variable sales price string with a string function and the sales price unit passed in as an argument. So let's try this. So let's try sales. Now we are converting it to a string, sales price string. So we use a string function, sales price unit, right? So this will convert it to a sales price unit. Now let's print this. Let's try this. Print sales price string, and then we print the data type of sales price string. Type. As I say, Python is case sensitive, so be careful in what you type. Okay, now that's it. Now we're going to assign a new variable statement called new statement. We're going to use this format function, right? So we're going to use the statement equals to this is a new function, something that's also quite frequently used, is dollars, where we're going to do this, and then we're going to use this braces, curly braces, and then we're going to use, so these curly braces will take in the value dot format, whatever we pass in here will be passed into the curly braces. So let's say sales price string is passed in, and then we can print the new statement, right? So when we do it, you can see that when in that case we converted the numerical variable, which is a float, into a string, and after we convert it to a string, we now format it here. We pass it this value, sales price string. It takes this value and pushes it into this dot format function, actually pushes it into these curly braces here. And then when it prints out, this new statement is actually the sales price is 450. And actually this 450, this curly braces is replaced by 450. Right? You can do more advanced stuff. As I said, this is a basic course. We're not going to do more advanced stuff of format. But format is a very good function that's used, quite widely used. Okay, we're going to be doing some input to do some calculations. So let's try this out, okay? Let's assign a variable price with the input function input price. So let's try price is equals to input input. I think this one we did earlier. So please follow enter price. Okay, and then we want to do quantity. I like price and quantity. Yeah. I know I'm an econs graduate, so price and quantity is very common, especially when you do demand supply analysis. Quantity. So all those econs graduates out there. Yeah, so total cost, price, revenue, whichever you want to call it, equals to price times quantity, right? Display the variable total cost. Let's print total cost. Okay, so let's say 25 is the price, quantity is 100. But there's an error because when you pass in a variable into an input statement, even though you are passing in a number, the number is still taken as a string. So you need to explicitly convert it to the variable of your desire or the variable you need for this computation, right? So you cannot use a string variable. That is the issue. The problem is input functions do not automatically convert themselves, because if they do give an opportunity to convert themselves, they might convert randomly. So this is kind of like a fail-safe mechanism. So it always stores in a string version. So you need to convert it when you are using input function yourself, right? So now let's try this again. Okay, let me just go back here and copy it. Copy this whole thing. I'm too lazy to type again. So here, input, and this time when I use total cost, I can set the input here, float here. I can do it here as well. Float. So float is a conversion here I'm using, float, and float as well. Quantity can be float or integer, up to you, depending on what you feel is appropriate. For me, I just use float, and then I print total cost. Usually you should do it at the input level, but it's up to you. So let me run this. Put 25, 100, 2,500. Okay, the reason why you do it at the input level, you put the float here, is because you do it one time. Then you can reuse it, use it very, very many times. If not, the next time, every time you use the price value, you always have to convert it to a float. So that's the only reason why you do it at there. Okay, now we are at the end of today's session. Okay, for today's lecture, lecture 3. Let's take 5 minutes to do this, and we'll continue soon after this. Try this out. So it's basically for you to require the user to put in 2 values. First value for height, second value for weight, and then you're supposed to calculate the BMI, which is the mathematical formula is weight over height times 2. Right? I think am I giving it the right formula? Just let me double check. So it's float weight over height. Yeah, height to the power of 2. So you have the height is applied to the power of 2. So weight over height times height, right? Height to the power of 2, height times height. Yeah. So it's weight over height times height. Okay, so you print your BMI. Let's take a break and we'll come back soon. Okay, so I hope you all have done this. Yep. So let me quickly run through it. So basically, it's very simple, a very simple exercise. Okay, let's now go into the solution for this. Okay, firstly, you need the user to put in 2 values. Firstly, for height equals to, you can do the float conversion here itself. So input, please enter your height in meters. If not, the calculation will not work. It'll be a wrong calculation, right? And then weight, let me move the mouse cursor away, equals to float, input, please enter your weight in kilograms, right? Okay, and then after this, what you have to do is you have to do the calculation. So BMI is equals to WIGHT weight divided by height, height to the power of 2. That means it's height times height. Okay, I like to be very careful and put both brackets. Okay, and then I will print BMI. So now the height, let's put it as 1.79 and my weight as 70. You can see that your BMI is 2.8470085203. Simple, as simple as that. You can redo this many times and use your own values. You can run it and you can see how it works. Okay, with that said, we are at the end of today's lecture. Okay, thank you so much for being such a lovely participant. Okay, see you in the next lecture. Bye.